Hello, boys and girls. It's that time again. It's 6 p.m. East Coast Standard Time. We're coming to you on Tuesday night, and we are coming from you from three undisclosed locations across the globe, live from our underground bunkers. It's your fearless leaders, Aaron the Man and Richy Rich Errico, also known as Vinny, and we have special guests tonight, Aaron and Justyna Counsaul. They're from America. I'm not going to. They feel led to tell you where. I don't want to do that to them, but they'll talk about themselves. But they're in America. And the reason we've got them on is title of tonight's episode is It's All About the Family. Now, this is the first of a four-part series, and we're excited because God is for the family unit. There's no doubt about it. And if God's for the family unit, guess who's not? The enemy's not for the family unit. Aaron and Justina are one of those classic Americana couples that you can't put in the box. They've been through it all, and I'm sure they'll talk about their struggles, their joys, and everything else about living a Christian life in this country we call America. And I'm just really excited, humbled, and honored to have them on as a couple that I respect completely on I know they've raised their family. No one's perfect. None of us are perfect. We're in an imperfect world, but I know that they love God, they love people, they love others, they especially love their family. And I can't think of a better couple to be an example that can inspire some of you and help you to navigate through the muddy waters of our country today and just getting worse and worse out there. Without further ado, before I bring on Aaron, I want to turn it over to the man. And go ahead, Mr. Man.
So we're going by just a half of my name because we are graced with another Aaron in our presence. And it's not too often that two Aarons can occupy the same space. And so this has been probably hardest episode. It's been a couple months in process of trying to get this going. And so the enemy is all about taking this episode down. I'm really excited about it because that's when I know God wants to move mightily in this situation and in this topic. But let me do a few housekeeping notes. Standing in the gaps.org is the website, and we have a lot of resources there. I'm not going to go into too much because we're tight on time, but check it out. We also have a bunch of amazing guests coming up. Also, we have an amazing guest here, but check it out. Also, check out our YouTube page. It's fresh, it's new, and we have a bunch of good stuff. A couple weeks ago, we had an awesome episode called The $1 Billion Prayer, and that is blowing up. Just having God step into your business is just mind blowing. But check that out. And if you want to be a supporter of Standing in the Gaps, then please consider being a Patreon. And also please consider checking out our merch store, where we have t-shirts and mugs and hats, bucket hats for Richy. He said you can have a merch store only if you have a bucket hat. If you don't do a bucket hat, then you can't have a merch store. And I'm like, okay, bucket hat it is. And so please check that out. And we also got some awesome prints on there too. Yeah, without further ado, I hand it back to our fearless leader, Richy.
Okay, I had to put on, those of you can't see, I had to put on my bucket hat because Aaron the Man mentioned there. I love bucket hats. So I don't wear like LL Cool J did in the day, but I do a pretty decent job wearing it. So anyway, before I bring on Aaron and Justina, I just want to tee it up if I can. The thing that I spoke about this on a previous episode, from my perception, there is no higher form of worship than a husband and wife in unity together. Now, there's always turbulence in a relationship. Don't misunderstand me when I talk about this. But when the two become one, and that's what the enemy is against, is the two becoming one. He always wants to separate. And what happens is that it's just amazing. The marriage bed, this is not a G-rated program, but the marriage bed is supposed to be sacred. It's actually a form of worship to God. And I won't go into the depth of it. You can listen to a previous episode where I really go into the depth of that, how that it's all prophetic. But my point is that that's why Aaron and I talk about how long we want Aaron and Justina to come on. And it's always in God's timing. I rest in that. but I know the enemy doesn't want this to go out. So I say to you, enemy, too bad, you lose again. We're going to have this go out. I believe it's going to be just as viral, if not more viral than the other episode we had, because people are concerned about their families. They definitely are, especially in this nutcase of a world we're in right now, especially in America and other nations in the West. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and Justina. And Aaron and Justina, sure, one of the two you want to start, just give a little background, where you guys are, your family life, who your families are, and as much as you want to share, what you don't, that's up to you, but I will turn it over to you. Give us a background on the both of you. Go ahead.
So I'm Justina. Aaron and I have been together for 32 years, married 27. And definitely, what people always ask us, what's the secret to your marriage? Is it not throwing in the towel the same day? But I have 5 kids, 1 in heaven, 3 adult children, and 1 teenager. And we're both in the medical industry. I'm in integrated medicine. My husband is a licensed medical professional that just helps people with respiratory issues. And let's see, what else? I was raised Roman Catholic, and when Aaron and I met and we moved to Connecticut, that's actually where we started going to a Bible believing church where it just opened up the
Well, hold
Bible.
on. Hold on. First, we went to that one church where that dude, Mike, was just yelling at us the whole time. I remember that.
Yeah, we went to a lot of
Yeah,
churches.
Fed-
We went to a lot of churches.
And we went to
Um,
that other church where the girl peed herself in the middle of the thing.
So we went to a
Wow.
lot
We
of
started.
crazy.
I was.
We went to a lot of crazy churches, and as a Roman Catholic growing up, I'm thinking to myself, what did I do? What did I do? I'm just trying to seek out God, and I'm like hitting these barriers, but it's okay. We just kept going through the trenches.
Let me throw in something right there. So the first time I went to her Catholic church, the church, they did like a few years ago, they did a redo of the church inside. Had these Italians come and do all the artwork and everything in it. It was like $7 million to redo the inside of the church. It was the most graven images I've ever seen in my entire life. It was gorgeous. Smell of frankincense, all the stuff from the Catholic world. And I'm not putting that down in any shape or form. I don't want to come across like that. But from what I realized, the idea of like praying and have a direct relationship with Christ, reading the Bible yourself. I take notes in my Bible. I highlight my Bible, all that stuff. And some Catholics literally freak out on the whole thing. But that being the thing, the first time I went to her church was a Polish church, and the dude's up there, Father Andrzej, the dude's up there with speaking in Latin, speaking in Polish, and all we did is sit up, stand down, sit up, stand down. I had no idea what was going on. And then the drumming noise of people praying the Catholic prayers and stuff. It was just a different experience for me. And I knew how cultural this was for her family, being Polish masses, so on and so forth. And then she gets involved with me, who grew up, I don't think I've ever not been a Christian. I've not always had the walk with Christ, but I've had always brought up in a Christian home. I have family members that are theologians and pastors and all this other stuff. And they've always been an influence. And I always purposely saw myself as like the black sheep. Like I love God, but God and I had our own relationship, right? And I didn't mean that in a positive way. I just didn't want to do it their way. So that's how I interjected in this to let her go again. So now she's a Roman Catholic, but when I'm Roman Catholic, I mean like European Roman Catholic. The Latin masses, the Polish masses, then she gets involved with me and we moved to Connecticut. Go from there, school.
Yeah, and it was definitely, I felt like when I was going to a non-denominational church and they preached out of the Bible, it was like you walking in with a suit that's 10 times too tight on you and you're still trying to be present and look good. That's what I felt like. I just felt very odd and uncomfortable. And the biggest thing for me was letting go of the tradition, the man-made tradition. And I had to understand that those are man-made and God is spiritual. He's not man-made. And when we look at religion's man-made, but God isn't. And I think that's where I had to really decipher the difference. And when we were getting married, I actually had the priest from my Catholic church call me up and tell me pretty much I'm going to hell if I
Well-
don't get married in the Catholic church.
She got
And
excommunicated.
I got
from the church.
excommunicated. I'm not allowed to go to I can go to the church, but I'm not allowed to take communion or take the blood of Christ. I'm not allowed to do any of that. And I was like, that's okay, because that's not what makes me a Christian. And that's not what's going to bring me to the Lord. And that's not how I become saved. And we met, that's where we met Vinny it, in Connecticut. And it was definitely a huge eye opener, and just Aaron and I learning more about each other, learning about ourselves, and just learning more about God through his word. And that's where we became saved back in 97 in September. And we got married October 25th. And we were only engaged. We dated for almost 5 years, but we were only engaged for 6 months and then got married, Aaron and I. And so,
I hope that was something.
yeah, no, I'm just saying. And then, so people ask, again, as I mentioned before, the earphone, ask all the time, again, what's your secret? And I'm like, honestly, not throwing in the towel the same day and being committed. And when you're in a committed relationship and you profess in front of God through thickness and through better and worse, it truly means through better and worse. And love is unconditional. Love isn't that romantic story, fairy tale. Yes, you want that, and that's how maybe you start your relationship, but that's not how you go through your relationship and throughout life. It's not always feeling good about each other every day. It's knowing that you have a commitment. And even though there's times where Aaron and I did not see eye to eye, and yes, maybe our kids kept us going together, and people are like, I'm not staying together for the kids. I was told by a very wise woman a long time ago, your kids would rather have their two parents together and going through trials and tribulations than not having them together at all. And it's almost like that storm. When you're going through a rough storm, you just keep going and you're going to eventually see the light. And yeah, it's going to get tough. And sometimes God weathers you through those storms because he has to strengthen you in areas you don't realize you need to be strengthened, because there's other things that are going to come in your life that you need to be strong for. But again, Aaron grew up pretty much
So I had
born again
grandparents
Christian.
that
And
helps. My grandfather here with my last name, Counsel, he helped start a church and was this guy that just absolutely wanted to keep the church in line with the Bible. I remember he would go through and I didn't grow up with a dad, and the idea that my dad wasn't in the house and mom and dad were separated. And then my dad would have us come and go to his house on Friday night. Him and his wife would go out. They'd drink and do whatever they do. He'd be hungover in the morning, and they'd go out again the next night. And then my brother and I would babysit, and then he'd drop us off Sunday morning to Grandma and Grandpa Console at church, and then go from there. So I didn't feel like I had that sort of flow with my father, so to speak. But what I did have is I had that time with Grandma, and Grandpa was such a determined man for the Lord. Like, he was so strict with it. And I was so excited to spend time with him. And then something would have been said from the pulpit, and Grandpa would grab his Bible and go right to the pastor afterwards and be like, we need to talk. You said this. What does that mean? What do you mean by it? We have to stay with the Bible, not your opinion. We have to stay this. And so he'd come back to breakfast on Sunday where Grandma was making chocolate chip pancakes. Oh, they were amazing. And he would sit there and he'd talk in a professional, kind way on it. And I didn't have a dad, like I said, day to day. I grew up in low income housing, socioeconomic depressed, all this other stuff. So I didn't grow up with people that were of the same culture that I was. And I got my ass beat every single day of my life. I got called all sorts of racist names, so on and so forth. And you probably can't see from the picture, but I'm about 285 pounds. I could bench 495 pounds. I've lifted weights my whole life. And I did that because I thought as I was growing up, if I got bigger, stronger, faster, then I could actually help protect myself and so on and so forth. And then so I grew up this sort of angry, non-directed kid that got into sports, found a lot of success from fighting, a lot of success from contact sports where I could basically hurt other people, football, lacrosse, wrestling. And all of a sudden I get older and I find a woman that I absolutely fell in love with. I want to tell my version of that story as we go along. But I was always around Christianity. I probably accepted someone when I was younger, didn't know what I was saying, probably had me accept Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, but I didn't do it out of my own heart. I didn't do it out of my own soul. I didn't do it out of my own spirit. So that's why Justina said in 1997, we both got saved in Connecticut. I think the important parts of that is I'd grown up a muck. I'd grown up undirected. My mom, God bless her, she's passed away now, but my mom never told me to graduate high school. She never told me to graduate college, go to college, and all that stuff. What she did, though, is she let me know she loved me unconditionally, no matter what. So as I was growing up and stuff, and kids beat me up outside, and I was too afraid to go outside and play, and all this crap going on, I'd come inside, and I just knew that was a safe place. I knew my mom loved me. All right.
Yeah, so we grew up in two different households. I grew up with two parents that have been married 54 years now, and they were together throughout my whole childhood and through my adulthood to now. And then Aaron grew up, as we can say, broken home where you don't have the two parents present. Yes, he saw his dad, but he didn't have. It was more like a detached father
Yeah.
figure in his life.
I
And
love them.
yeah,
I care about them.
and honestly, those two upbringing did cause a lot of, I guess, challenge you
Turmoil.
could say, in turmoils, because I saw things how they should be differently. Aaron saw things how they should be differently. And Aaron grew a lot. I would say he didn't have a physical father figure, but he had a spiritual. And that's where he learned how to be a
That's true.
father, is actually
That's
through the
true.
Bible.
Yeah. That's
So
exactly
he
true.
actually had to dive into and go learn from other strong men in our
Yes.
church on how to be a husband, how to be a dad, how to be a friend, how to be just a better person all around. And yes, I learned that as well, but his learning curve was a lot different than mine.
So this is actually when, and I'll get it. Do you want to tell a story of how I met her? Cute. But this is when I wound up going to Connecticut, and we're surfing churches there, and we found some interesting churches. But I'll tell you this, and like when you read the Bible, you could read a verse today, tomorrow, the next day, come back to it years later, have notes written alongside of it, and you read through that, and it'll mean something completely different to you. So we were going to those churches. Yeah, we were going to these churches, and I don't remember the guy's name, but his name was Mike. He used to be a priest. He now was a pastor, and he was all brimstone. He'd yell at you in the middle of 12 people.
I remember the church. I remember
You
the
remember? I got fed. I swear I got fed at that church. And if you remember, Vinny, he was like, he would say, Pastor Mike would say his voice was so bad that he didn't want to sing because he felt like it would offend God. And I was like, okay, not biblical, but honestly, I really feel like God had fed us enough where when Mike started seeing these things, it didn't jive with me. And I knew that they were Mike's weaknesses, and it wasn't biblical, but he was speaking in a biblical term, that it was time for us to start Coach Upland. But I have to thank that man, because he helped build a foundation that's who I am now, even though it was a very short window. And then we went to another one where these two, the wife promoted the husband so much. She loved this man forever. I had said to him, hey, Pastor, what's going on? Oh, she scolded me. Don't you dare call him Pastor again. That's Pastor George, or whatever his name was. And I looked at her like, what's wrong with you, like a woman? And that's where we went. That's when we started saying, okay, maybe this isn't the place for us either. And then during this whole time period, I'm going to get a little edifying to you. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but we started getting involved with what we were doing in Connecticut. And all of a sudden I got in front of these strong leaders. I have never, out of some of the best national, maybe world speakers in the world, you've always been one of my favorite presenters. And all of a sudden I found a man that loved God, found a man that talked straight. I found a man that loved the people around him and was honestly, genuinely invested in other people's success. But he was a man. Like, it wasn't like someone was out there trying to get someone. They were actually masculine, strong men looking to push forward, looking to speak about God. And that right there was like, all right, I don't know what's going on here, but I need that. Like, I need it from the inside of my heart. Vinny at one point was my hero, and then he became my friend, which is such an interesting thing to have happen. And it was incredibly impactful. Okay. So I got to paint this picture. I would street fight on a normal basis. Okay. I grew up having a lot of success being physical. Okay. So I think she's crying a little bit.
Fearing because of it. It's so true, because like when we move,
Bring back good memories.
bringing good memories. Honestly, Vinny and Amy, we just knew them as a very solid Christian couple. And so you're just always searching for good
Yeah.
hearted people, and people you can look up to, and people you can learn from, because in this life, you don't always know what to do and how to act and how to be, but you want to be a good person. They always say making sure you surround yourself around the good people. And we were so blessed. And we've known
I'd give them up.
Vinny for so many years, and then bringing us back full circle to being reunited again on a different light. Yes, now Amy is no longer here, but those memories are always here.
Yeah. Very syllables. Can I just give me 1 second? It's amazing because I've known you guys before you were married. So as you're talking, it's just bringing back memories and just realizing that God is the one that truly weaves the fabric of our life. See, I've got my first book out, and you're gonna learn with some of the internal struggles that I've had in my life. It'll probably be very shocking to you, but I was a high functioning addict my whole life. I don't want to go down a tangent, but you guys will learn something about me in that book. And so anyway, my third book is titled There Are No Coincidences, and it's about the providence of God. See, we all learn about the sovereignty of God, Aaron and Justina, and I always learned about the sovereignty, which is his authority. But if you look up the definition of providence, it's the protective care of God. That's one of the definitions of providence. So whether we had good or bad circumstances, when we back up, it's like you've got a daughter, I believe you said you have one in heaven. I don't remember with daughter or son, but I have a son in. I'm sorry?
Yeah. A son.
Was it a daughter?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a son in heaven too. So you just recognize that my wife was taken, but I've given a prophetic word from somebody that Isaiah 55 or something like that. Really, she was such a good-hearted person that God took her home because of the times we're about to walk through, and that just brought it to a whole different level
Yeah.
for me. So
Yeah.
I know she's looking down upon us, and just to see us back together again. You're right; it's full circle. So go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
And it's super exciting with your new wife, which is such a blessing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure is.
I can't paint a strong enough picture that just I come from different sides of the track. So she was basically a soc and I was a greaser. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
here I am, this kid that I want to solve things with my fists. I've got a big ego and I'm arrogant and I've got no reason to be, right? I don't own a nice anything. Maybe I owned a nice leather jacket, I think. And so I met a
Yeah,
friend.
you did have a
Well,
nice leather jacket. I remember that. You were part of
I met a friend that I was told had died just out of high school from a heart attack, which would be awkward, but all of a sudden I saw this kid and I was like, oh no, I can't believe you're alive. His name is William, but his name was Chi. We called him Black Cheese. He's a black kid. I don't know why, black kid. He used to have a pierced nose with a piece of cheese here and he had a big cheese tattoo on his chest. So big cheese. And I hadn't seen him forever. And so I was at a store and all of a sudden this kid came up to me and I couldn't believe it was him. I was just gave him a great big hug. He's, hey, I work down in the city at this store. You should come visit me. You can have any one of the girls that work there. So I was like, all right, I'm definitely coming down there. So I go down there and visit him. And there's another girl working in there. And then so I walk in and this is how well I remember this. And I'm going to paint a picture. She's squatting down she always wore like yoga pants, but she'd wear flat shoes, like heels, dress shoes with little bows on the front of them. Okay. And then she had it was a 7-Eleven I went to. It was a 7-Eleven shirt she was wearing. And she's putting Snickers bars up on of squatting down. I came in. I had a pair of Timberland boots on, a pair of jeans on that were cut. Probably half my left cheek was hanging out of the back of my jean. I had a tank top on. I had a denim jacket on, and then I put a leather jacket over that with a collar up.
Wow.
I looked down the aisle and I'm like, wow, she's gorgeous. And I just went, and she looked back at me like if she could have spit at me, she would have. And I was like, she spit at, I was like, that girl likes me. She loves me. And then slowly but surely, we all started going out in a group of friends. This is actually a good thing for people about dating and so on and so forth. I actually had a girlfriend that I was in the process of ending. Very nice girl. Just we had been together and we were too immature and it wasn't going to work. But when you invest time in someone, it was sometimes hard to break up. I but I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't have a relationship with her. And I knew she had a boyfriend. So I broke up with my girlfriend at some point, but didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know like I was available. I didn't want to mess anything up because I just had a nice relationship with the friends we were at. So we would go out to eat at, what was the restaurant we always go to?
Perkin.
At Perkin. And we always wind up there at night. And then occasionally just I would be the last people there. She had her own car. I had my own car. And we would just talk and so on and so forth. And I just was like, I really like this girl. I respect her so much. Like, I was never thinking to myself, and I'm going to be blunt. I was never thinking to myself, I want to sleep with her. I was never thinking to myself, I can't wait to get to know her intimately. But in my own mind, I was like, the spiritual connection between us, the chemistry between us was just so amazing that I wanted to so much. Looking back now, that was a God thing. God literally handed her to me and gave me some sort of discernment that said to myself, don't move too fast with this, take it slow. During that time period, she winds up breaking up with her boyfriend for no particular reason. It had nothing to do with me. And then the second they found out she didn't have a boyfriend, I literally grabbed her by the back of the head and kissed her.
Or just a
That's-
relationship before that we just felt were nothing bad. It was fine, but we just knew that they weren't the right people. And that's okay in life. And sometimes you have to agree that it's not, you don't have to have an ugly breakup. You can still have a breakup and still care for each other, but no, it's not the right person for you that God has for you for the rest of your life. And I knew Aaron was that person, even though he came up from a crazy background. I'm like, this is so odd, but it was definitely the right man.
And then you want to move into Connecticut. Sweet. So I, like, all my friends, and we met when you were 20, I was 21.
Something like that.
It was right at your birthday and stuff like that. So that's a time period where people are like making big life decisions. You're out of your teenage years, you got some college in, or you've gone to college and all that other
Right.
stuff, and you're looking to figure out what your next steps are in life. For myself, I just didn't know. I never had that leadership in my life. Justina had a very clear outlook where she was going, and somehow she trusted me with moving forward in a relationship. But in the big picture, she knew I was a hard worker. She knew I appreciated things that I had. I would work 2 part-time jobs, a full-time job. Sorry, a full-time job, 2 part-time jobs. I didn't have a lot of money, so a car that I had was, I had paid $50 for this car. It was a 92, I think it was a 1982 Delta 88, where if you drove too fast, the side door wouldn't vibrate. There was no, the metal was so rusted out. You know, you put too much gas in the car, it would leak out the gas tank and all that stuff. But he'd want to go on a date, and I would, Dad, I'd love to spend time with you, but you have to come to my house. I have to fix my car. And she looked at me and said, again, this is a God thing. She looked at me and said, oh, this kid's a loser. He's got nothing going for him. All her friends had cars, had parents that could help them with that stuff. And here I was, like, if you want to come spend time with me, you're going to have to do it while I'm under the car handing me tools.
Yeah, exactly. In his
Yeah.
garage, even if it was freezing cold.
Freezing
He
cold.
lived in the Northeast where temperatures would drop and he'd have a little space heater. But I just enjoy it.
And she
It is-
appreciated the fact that I actually took, I don't want to say took care, but that I would fix things. I don't know.
You just like that you were handy and
Okay.
that you had a goal and you needed to fix it and you would do whatever you can to repair and accomplish what you. Yep.
She had things I had.
Yeah, you just figured out how to get it done. And so Aaron is extremely handy. And again, like now, if he can, there's not one thing he can't fix. If he's, oh, just the air conditioning broke. I'm like, okay. And he's like, you think I'm going to fix it? And I'm like, I know you're going to fix it. He said, you think I can? I'm like, now I know if you can't, you'll figure it out. So YouTube has become his best friend when he has to fix things around the house.
So Justina winds up finishing college. I went to college and it really wasn't for me. Justina winds up finishing college, gets a job making a tremendous amount of money out of college. Hard job. And we had a choice between New York City, Boston, and Connecticut.
Right.
And
We went to Connecticut.
yeah, I was absolutely, she wanted to go to New York City. She wanted to chase the big lights. She wanted the glitz and glamour sort of everything. That's her. If she could bedazzle her everything, that's what she do. So I said, no way to New York City, and let's go to Connecticut. So Boston was never in the thought process. So we went there. Obviously, that's where we met Vinny and a bunch of great people and really picked a direction in our lives. And the sort of funny thing to that, no matter how you look at it financially, that's always a big concern. And I will go against the grain. People say money doesn't create happiness. I completely disagree. Money creates options. Money creates security. And then that's where our happiness comes from. And I'm not saying the drive for money where you're ruining people around you to go do that.
Right.
eroding your own self to chase those things, that obviously doesn't make you happy. But in the big picture, if you can get security, if you can have a better option, you will be a happier person. Justine goes to Connecticut, he's making a tremendous amount of money there, right? And I'm thinking, we got it made. If we're out of college making this much, and when I say me, I mean her, making this much money, and we're only going to go uphill. But it didn't work that way. We go through, and a bunch of stuff happens. And we're not struggling. We're pushing our way through life as young people, and got a lot of goals going on. Vinny was a leader of men and is a leader of men, was really putting some foundational things into my foundation, saying no one had ever opened up my mind in this direction of things that I could do, or better yet, should be doing. And a lot of the things that were being taught to me, I identified as just foundational things. So that's what we did. We went forward and made great relationships. We only were in Connecticut for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it
Wow.
was 20 years.
Yeah.
That type of relationship.
That's it.
Yeah, just
We only lived in Connecticut for 2 years. Yeah.
What an impact you had on my life. I could have sworn it was the decade.
That's right.
Wow.
So it really
That-
felt like that.
Yeah. The bonds, and there's still a couple people that we keep in touch with, and it's like that brother and sister that you may not speak to for 10 years, but then you reunite and it's 10 years never went by.
Sure.
I made a decision while she was making so much money that I was going to figure my life out career-wise. So I pretty much answered every business thing. Vinny, I think you'll appreciate this. Every business thing that was in being published. So at one point I went to this company and I could be a candy striper. Okay. So this is a true story. So I go there and you actually wore the candy striping. I didn't know this was a thing, a candy striping uniform. Okay.
Wow.
And then I get in there, I'm talking to the guy, I convince him he's going to hire me. And but I want to let you know, nobody in this entire candy factory speaks English. They all speak Spanish. I don't speak any Spanish, maybe some word, but nothing. I get ready to show up and he's like, I can't hire you. I'm not hiring you. Forget about it. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I worked in a place in Connecticut that did slides for guns, for Glocks. And every day I was a machine shop. Every day I left, I'd have metal in my fingers. I was like, that didn't work. I went and got a job at this packing company, which I actually was good. I was getting a little aggressive. So I used to go in and they'd offer me the job and I'd tell them I wouldn't work it unless they paid me more money. I tried to just be irritating, negotiating, and this company gave me more money. It was right in Marital, I think. And they came to me and said, okay, the guy that owns it, the Jewish guy, he's in a wheelchair. If you see him, do not talk to him. He doesn't like it when people who aren't Jewish talk to him. This is how it is.
Wow.
So I'm packing things like my third day. I see the guy in the wheelchair and guess what? Hey man, how are you? You guys hired me. Thank you so much, Mr. Candy. It was really nice to meet. 15 minutes later, the guy leaves. I get a call. Can Aaron Counsaul please come upstairs? And the guy's almost here. She says, I'm so sorry. You're a really good worker. We want your quality person here, but I have to fire you because you talked to the owner. So I came home and told Justina, I'm like, hey, I got fired. I talked to the Jewish guy. I couldn't help it. I had to. You ever seen a sign that says don't touch? I'm touching. That's like, I can't help it.
That's
So,
so you out.
come on, you're really going to fire me because I talk to you?
That's so you.
I'm a Christian.
It's
Like,
so
I love
true.
Jewish people.
I don't remember the story. I don't remember the story, but it's so you. I see you doing it. That's great.
So that's when we go and we start through that guy, that Pastor Mike. He knew a couple guys that ran Tropicana route. I can talk about that a little bit.
Huh.
Ran Tropicana routes. Dennis Belargin, Santo Galino. Remember these guys?
Yeah.
They're going to hire me. I'm a big guy. They're going to hire me to load their trucks. I'm going to be a lumber. So I show up. They want me to meet me at like literally 4:30 in the morning. If you know me, I'm not a morning person. They want to meet me at 4:30 in the morning. We meet at a restaurant on Meriden Parkway.
Diner.
And I eat. And Dennis was this German guy with that waxed mustache for the beard. And he's, you still look hungry. And I'm like, man, I could always eat. So they bought me 2 breakfasts in the morning. I'm like, this is cool. Like, it's great. So we go to the Tropicana warehouse in Cheshire, Connecticut, and we start loading the trucks. And it's maybe 4 or 5 hours, hard work, sweating, but I like that stuff. I like physically doing stuff. Get all the trucks loaded, do all those stuff. And then Dennis turns around and hands me $300. And I'm like, oh, hell no. There's no way I'm doing all this hard ass work, getting up at 4:30 in the morning for $300 every day of the week. And Dennis or Santo, Dennis, no, that's just for today. So I worked maybe, let's say 5 hours. They paid me $300. under the table. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way they could do this. Like, they're gonna hire me 3 days a week, right? And this is what, 93?
It's 93, 93, 94.
Yeah,
So
90
$300 under the table.
95.
95? 300
Oh,
bucks,
was it?
whatever.
Or
Yeah, no, you're
200 bucks.
right. It was 95 because I was in Marital, 95. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm thinking that if I do that 3 days a week, that's $900 under the table. Like, number one, how can they afford that? And number two, that's a lot of money, right? So as we go forward, I'm working with Dennis, I'm working with Santo, whoever has the bigger route that day. I actually jump on the truck with them, start working. They're buying me food during daytime. We're having great conversation. These are tough, rugged men, very successful in what they're doing. They're making a killing financially. Like, these guys, they literally walk into a 7-Eleven or a store and be like, Tropicana, what do you need? And they're like, oh, give me $1,000 of juice. And so I'm like, this is pretty easy. Some gentleman crashed his truck and I wound up taking over the old Saybrook route. So they took the old Saybrook route. The guy that ran the warehouse, his name was Flip Wilson. Flip goes, hey, you hear you're from Rochester, New York. Would you be willing to take the Rochester, New York route? We'll give it to you for free. And I'm like,
Wow.
I would, but he's like, we'll give you a truck. I came back home and I said to Justina, you're not going to believe this, but I think this is a good opportunity. And she's, I don't know, how do you make money in it? So we sat down and wrote 400,000 different ways. Some of the goal things that you and your team would put me together with teaching me.
Yeah.
We wrote down these goals, dreams. We wrote down all sorts of, I don't want to say a business plan, but it was an outline of something. And then we wound up saying, okay, let's do it. Justina and I loaded our entire house
Into your truck.
into the Tropicana truck and then drove back up to Rochester, and she drove back separately. And then he went from there. And then I wound up building Tropicana for how many years? 10 years?
A long time.
I have to interject here. You're so fortunate, Aaron, like I was, to have a Polish wife, because only a Polish wife would do
Would deal
what
with
you're
that.
describing. You know what I'm saying? Because they're so
Yeah.
strong. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure like it was a nightmare, but you guys are laughing because it was just
It was so
part of your-
scary.
Oh yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. I can imagine.
And I went to her and I
thinking,
just, like, do you think we could do this? And she's, I think you can do it. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Do you have any idea what we have to do? We have to do this in a warehouse and marketing. And what do we have to do? Is that what we have to do? I don't know. And then, so we basically made it all happen.
And
And there
those
was things like,
and those routes are pretty expensive to, like, the fact that they gave it to you for free. Usually you have to pay for a route and then provide your
A lot
own
of money.
vehicle. And yeah, because I had a friend that was looking at something like that, and they wanted like thousands of dollars just for the route.
You're talking
Oh,
6
okay.
figures.
so
Yeah.
the trucks were refrigerated because Tropicana premium orange juice was a big part of our sales. So the trucks had to be refrigerated. And I wound up finding this truck on the intercity. The guy had the body on the ground. The truck had been impounded from traveling between New York State and Canada with illegals that they were sneaking into the country. And so it just got out of being impounded. And I'm like, this is the perfect truck for me. And like, I need this truck. Nobody wanted it. I don't know why. I need a little work. And I started up the big diesel truck, right? Started up. It's a Mitsubishi Fuso truck, but the big ones,
Right.
tag axle, rear drop plate, all this other stuff. And the rear tires, the second rear axle's frozen out. Couldn't find out the brakes were locked. I drove that thing with the rear tires smoking all the way to the mechanics. I'm like, fix it. And it was an easy fix. You just had to fix the brakes and stuff like that. But that's how I started this stuff. And then it got so expensive to get these trucks fixed. Then I were grabbing tools and I was doing small little repairs on the trucks trying to fix them. I would wind up, when we got this thing up and running in the middle of July in New York, it gets 80, 90, 100 degrees. I would have to literally, I'd come home, sleep for a little bit, and then I'd go back and check my trucks and make sure all the freezer units were on all of them so that in the morning the juice wouldn't have spoiled. Oh, I got a kind of an interesting part of this thing. So we moved back. We're with just family. We moved in their house where we were trying to find a house, getting some financial stuff all saved up and doing all those things. And starting this whole thing, I'd pretty much get up early in the morning and then we'd load the trucks. So maybe, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, load the trucks. That'd take a few hours. Now we're all sweaty and dirty, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning. We go out and sell the juice. You'd finish up by 5 to 6 o'clock at night. And then I'd get a call from the warehouse saying, hey, we're delivering another pallet or another truckload of juice to you. You got to take the pallets off the truck, store them, and go from there. And it's a true story. And so I'd say, hey, Justina, I'm really sorry, but I can't come home. I'm just going to sleep in my truck. Say that to a young new wife. I've been gone all day long. She must be cheating on me. I'm going to see what you're doing, so on and so forth. So as sweet as she was, she would actually, been a Polish wife, she'd make me food and she'd come over and look for me by the warehouse. And I had a
I believe
Suburban
it.
at the time. And I'd be in the Suburban. It smelled like complete sweat and dirtiness. Right? And she beats on the window and she's like, oh my gosh, you aren't cheating on me. You're actually working hard. Right? So, wife perspective, I was building this business sometimes 14, 15, 18 hours a day, sleeping in my truck trying to do it. I'd be sitting there. Oh, I got another funny story. So we were in the inner city, right? I would take, I don't know, at the end of the day, I'd have 20, 30, $40,000 in cash sometimes. So I put all this cash and it's ones, fives, 10. Like people aren't paying me 100 and I don't want their checks because it's inner city stores. I don't chase money around. So I've got a briefcase filled with cash. All right. It's sitting next to me. I'm holding it tight. I'm leaving the inner city and I'm just being straightforward here. It's a drug infested, hooker infested area where my warehouse was. I'm driving in this really nice, jacked up Suburban with chrome wheels and big tires on it. The cops see me. What do you think they do? Pull me over,
Oh, they close.
right?
Right.
One got a shotgun. I roll all the windows so they could see in the truck. One guy's out my passenger door with a shotgun. The other guy's over here. And he goes, what are you doing in their city? They think I'm buying drugs or they think I'm buying hookers, something like that, right? I do have a big shirt on, but I have my briefcase with my wallet and everything in it. And he show me your ID. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to show you my ID, but I have $30,000 in this briefcase. All of a sudden, the guy over here is, this guy grabs the gun. And I'm like, I'll be honest with you. I'm like, these guys are just going to rob me. The cops are, right? Like,
Wow.
I'm not saying cops are bad. I'm just simply saying I'm scared to death coming out of a place. And I'm like, no, I've got all these business cards. I got all this stuff, but I have $30,000 in cash in here. And the guy's like, why the hell do you have that much money? And he thinks I'm buying drugs already or buying a hooker or whatever. So long story short, throw me in the back of the car.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, they're robbing me. And they basically went through and I kept telling the guys, hey, if you guys are trying to be funny with that money, and they were really insulted, if you guys are trying to be funny with all the cash that's in there and stuff like that, I have a receipt for every single thing I did today at work. It prints it off. And they didn't take any money. Obviously, I don't think they would, but it was a pretty scary thing. And these cops would see me doing this stuff and instantly think I was the bad guy, right? So that leads us to, go ahead, Vin.
Yeah, no, I forgot how similar you and I have the best stories. It reminded me of the stories that we would share with each other. I'm not gonna add to it, but I'm remembering that if it's gonna happen to anybody, it's gonna happen to either Richy or Aaron.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's it. Yeah.
So go ahead.
So that leads us to we have that business going, and now I've built it from a small business to a bigger business. I'm taking over Buffalo. I've taken over Buffalo, Rochester, Buffalo, getting started in Syracuse, and all of a sudden we start having kids. So I'll let you fill in there. I get
Yeah,
you pregnant.
so we're pregnant with our first child, and I work full time, and I have a really good career, and I carry the in health insurance that Aaron, business owner, me having my job is pretty critical because health insurance back then it paid for everything. You maybe had a $20 copay, and then the rest was paid for. It's different nowadays, and so we just figured out, okay, after I had the baby, I'll stay home for a couple months and then go back to work. And then we'll have a nanny come in the house and take care of the baby and stuff. We had this life perfectly planned. And then all of a sudden, I go into premature labor and I end up having my daughter at 26 weeks and 4 days.
Which is
So
like 3.5 months early.
Yes. And she's considered a micro preemie. She was born 1 pound, 13 ounces, the length of a Barbie doll. And it was just like, I don't even know. It was so surreal. You're just like existing. You're not sure what's going to happen, what's going on. This is not what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to have a baby, take the baby home, go back, stay home for a couple months, go back to work, have a nanny come in. And like our world was flipped upside down.
And during that time period, like I'm saying to myself, God, why are you doing this? Everything was good. You know what I mean? And I could look back now and say, I didn't appreciate what I had. You know what I mean? I wasn't
Right.
thanking God enough. I wasn't praising God. I wasn't as close as God as I should have been, because really at that point I was making money and I was doing it off my back in my fleshly thought process. I was doing it off my own elbow grease. And we had great health care. She was making money. I was making money. I had this, we had the ability, how many vacations where we go on a year?
Yeah. We just had the flexibility of doing what we wanted when we wanted.
For
And
what we felt like
what
was our
we
own
felt.
blessing,
Right.
not blessing that God was giving us, and not that we were having gratitude for. So I really think, so this is where it gets a little crazy. I don't think that was by chance that we had the premium baby. That brought us so
100%.
much
Yeah.
closer. You
And
agree?
it brought us closer, but it also allowed us to have so much faith in
Yeah.
God that people were
Yeah.
like, how did you get through it? I'm like, honestly, I
We
don't
didn't.
know. We just didn't. We just woke up and did what we had to do. It wasn't by choice. It wasn't like, okay, you can do this or you don't do it. No, we just got up and did it. And having our baby in the NICU and just going and taking care of her there and doing what we can. And the hardest thing is being a mom, you're supposed to be able to take care of your child 24/7. And you're going into the hospital and they're taking care of your child 24/7 and you're the part-time mom. And that was really hard, like mentally. But at the same time, I didn't know any different at that moment. I just listened to what they told me to do. And it was a couple of times too. And I think back, I wasn't versed in the medical field, but God gives moms like this sixth sense. And if you feel like there's something wrong, and there
Yeah.
was times we challenged the doctors. Here I have no medical background. But I knew how to read studies because I was in pharmaceutical sales. I knew how to read studies. I knew how to ask questions being in sales. So I knew basic things to do that got me through it. And so we would challenge the doctor, like they wanted to give her a certain medication for a certain reason. And they would just tell me it's protocol. We just do it with every baby. And I'm like, that's great. You do it with every baby, but why does it have to be with my daughter? I need to know why and what is it going to benefit her? Is there going to be long-term effects? Like even like oxygen levels, like making sure the oxygen saturation always stayed above 92%, because in the long run, it would affect her eyes and her vision. And like the things that we learned and that I became on top of was amazing. And it was literally just having the faith that we're going to get through it. And I remember someone saying, oh, you should write a journal of everything you write. And I'm like, after these days are gone, I don't want to remember these days. This is hard. But at the same time, I wish I did write a journal. But at that time, I just didn't feel it. We didn't have social media. I didn't have
There's
anything.
no
They gave
support.
me a book, this thing, and said, this is all the things a baby can go through in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. And another thing is you're in the neonatal world. And I'm thinking to myself, only people that do drugs have babies that have to go
Oh, there's
into
so many.
the NICU.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't do drugs. I didn't do anything wrong. Like I tried to live and eat healthy
Always have.
and
Yeah.
always
Well,
have. I'm like, what
well,
happened? And then I realized that was just a perceived, image. And that's wrong. Just like this can happen to anybody. And yes, we did see all different types of walks of life in there. But I just knew that I had to be there for my daughter. And there was scary times in there. We almost lost her. I
Nice.
literally
Yeah.
watched her oxygen and her heart rate almost hit 0, where they had to bring her
wow.
back. And just, you didn't think, all I thought was like, God, this is in your hands. It literally is in your hands.
Do you think so at that part of your life, do you think you ever prayed that much? Like, because
I
we were Christians for a while at that
Yeah,
point.
praying and just believing and just being like, I just have to do what I have to do. And that's it. I don't think anything magical happened. And I didn't really have anyone to learn from because
Magical happened was what though?
anything magical happened from saying, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how it's all going to be. Like they gave always the worst scenarios. Your daughter can come out and be handicapped. She could
Blind.
be
Deaf.
blind. She could be deaf. She could this and that. She'll never run a marathon. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and one time I told the doctor, I'm like, why are you already putting blocks on my daughter? And another thing is the businesses that we had, we always read a lot of motivational books. So I was always trying to be very positive. And I said to the doctor, I'm like, you're already telling me my daughter can't do something and she's not even 6 months old. I'm like, you're already trying to put the blocks on her. I said, that's wrong. I said, she's going to be who she wants to. She's going to accomplish whatever she wants to. And then also being on a lot of painkillers, they talk about when she's older, she can get into drugs easier. And if she does, she can become addicted very quickly because of that. So like you have more against you than for you. And I had to just keep plowing through. And doctors would look at us and I think they would think we're crazy because we tried to be so positive. Like I had the day shift, Aaron had the night shift. So we always joke about this. I'd be there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Aaron would come in, like the nurses change. They'd be there from 7. Then the next nurse would come from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it'd be like me and Aaron. So Aaron would go in and just be by her. Yeah, we would sit there, but we would read to her. We'd open up because she was a little incubator. So we'd open up the door. We would read to her. We would found out playing classical music, putting a little speaker in there to have help with brain development because she wasn't in utero anymore. She was out. And so I wanted to know what can I do to duplicate what she would be if she was still inside me. And that's what I did. And then I just read studies. There was the computer, but a lot of things you read were all paper and finding things out. And yes, we use the computer for research and just just making decisions on different treatments that she had to have. Anything she had, even from a PDA ligation, a PDA, all it is just clamping I think it's the artery that goes between
It's an artery. It's an artery that turns into a vein,
that
turns into a ligament.
that it needed to be clamped between the heart and the lungs. Like, and the surgeon laughed. This is one of the easiest surgeries I have. I'm like, I understand that, but she's still my baby. She's still going into surgery. I still want to ask you all these questions. And he was amazing.
Yeah.
He just sat down and he's like,
Dr.
completely
Alfieri.
agree with you. I will tell you everything and answer all your questions. And so they knew because the nurses had a book and they knew that when Aaron and Justina came in and if there was any changes or any protocols that we need to do, be ready to bring the doctor. Because I God bless the nurses, but they just were the information givers. I needed to know the exact source
Why we
and
were making
why
these
they're
decisions.
making
Yeah.
these decisions. So I always ask for the doctors. They would sometimes get annoyed, but I'm like, it's okay. You can get annoyed, but this is my baby and from forever. Like when I leave here, you're not going to be there with me. So if there's anything that goes wrong and I could have changed it, then that is on me. And again, there's things that we made decisions
Sure.
on, but it was faith. It was through faith. And
So,
I think that's where our journey really started and with believing in God and putting things in perspective.
so this is the first time I've ever heard this much detail. Like I knew you guys back then when you were going through the struggle, but now I can cross off a question I have on my list here. I don't have to ask you this question because you just, without directly answering it, answered it. There's actually three keys to your success here that I see. Three marks. Number one, your belief in God. Number two, you were wide awake. And number three, love compelled you to not count the cost. And see, I had the question down here. I said, I don't even have to ask anymore. What was the number one attack on your family? It's been answered, okay? Because you lost another child. So it's always been health, your family unit, staying together, staying as one. So that's the number one attack. And you answered. So that is why Aaron and Justina have what you have today.
I agree.
It's inherent. It's right there. And you could list a whole bunch of subcategories after those three things, but it's amazing because that's really what the whole, and we did the micro now. I want to bring it to the macro. I want to say because we've got families listening, Aaron and Justina, that don't know what the hell they're doing because they don't have an instruction book. You guys were smart enough to know that the Bible was an instruction book, but some of these families have no clue. And they're sitting there, they're young like you were, thrown into the wolves, basically. And you guys, those three key attributes are so what is lacking and what is causing the mayhem in our country today, because parents are letting, and I'm not pointing a finger because I don't have any children here on earth. I have spiritual children, but I have no actual genetic children yet. But I'm not pointing a finger, but it's systemic where I see parents, because they're so busy, they're not engaged.
I would say, yeah, as times get hard, we went into the Bible. When times got hard, we went into the church. When times got hard, we went to pastors and said, we don't understand this, help us.
Mhm.
And there was times through that, though, like we haven't really talked so much. There's times for that where like she said she would do the day shift, I'd do the night shift. The only reason why I did night shift is because I'd go and beg her to leave. I had a different role. Not that my role was taking care of that baby, but my role was to take care of my wife. And when I took care of my wife, things fell in line. And I only knew that because I went to the church and said, holy cow, what do I do? You got to help me. I don't know. Do I spend time with the baby? Do I focus on cutting the lawn so the house looks good when she comes home? Or do I cater to my wife? The pastor's like, let's get into the Bible and read what
Yeah.
you should do.
And we had a great Pastor George Grace, and he always came up to
Pastor
the
Mann.
hospital and visited Veronica, our daughter, there. And it's because when you're allowed to write down who can see your baby at any time without you being there. So we had a very short, limited list, and he was on it. And
Mike Metzger.
yeah, so Mike as well. And we would have them, and they would just go in and pray. And when we see them in church, they'd be like, we saw Veronica and we prayed. And I was just like so honored and blessed that they would go. And Aaron and I'm not saying by any means, we did not have the perfect marriage, but we had God, and we had centered, and we had really good people within our church that we can lean on. We had Betsy Mowry and Mike Metzger. And I'll tell you, yes, we want to say they saved our marriage, but they saved our marriage through God. And they taught us that they're not always going to be here because they're just the flesh. But here's the word of God. So anytime we had a question or a struggle, they would say, this is what God said. But they wouldn't just tell us what God said. They would open up the Bible and say, let's go to Matthew. Let's go to Luke. Let's go to Psalms. Let's go to Proverbs. And this is the answer. And so they taught us how to search for the answer and how to search for God's word and what he requires of us. And coming from a 2-family household, my mom worked. So she was a very strong woman. Not to say moms that don't work are not strong, but
Your mom did both.
she did both.
Yeah.
And so for me to think to stay home, that wasn't a thought process. And not that it was a bad or good thing. It's just because my role model was my mom, who worked and cared for the family. So she did both. And at that era back then, it's the woman can have it all: the family, the career, the social life.
That was the
everything.
typical
That
woman.
was the successful woman.
Yeah.
That was what was image. And did I achieve that? Probably on certain levels, but at the same time, they always say you can't focus on more than one thing and be successful. And it was hard. It was hard working and being a mom, but at the same time, that's all I knew, and I just needed to make it work. And so what my point was talking about my mom, is she was a very strong woman. So I was a very strong person and personality, and I needed to have someone stronger than me mentally to lead me. Because if I had a weak man, I'm going to lead him and walk all over him. And I
Right.
needed a man that was stronger than, and I did try, but
I'm
at the
sure.
same time, and it's not in a bad way, where like a physical way. It was more of a mental way, because my parents raised us to be very independent. Don't depend on anybody. You go to school, get a good job, be able to support yourself. So let's say you don't get married. Maybe that's not in your plan. You can support yourself and take care of yourself. So I thought to myself, I don't need anybody. If I have a husband, great, he'll add to it. But at the end of the day, I can take care of all this on my own. And for a long time, could also be a very bad and negative, what do you call it, just trait, because you have to be one. And when you are one, and submitting is a word that women are like, oh,
Scared.
I'm not bowing down and kneeling and throwing down the red carpet for my husband and letting him walk all over me. No, that's not what it means. It means is that as much as I want to be a strong woman, I want to be treated like a princess and like a lady. I want the doors to be open for me. Yeah, I can open them if I have to. No problem. I can write my name in the stand. There's different songs. I can do all this by myself, but I don't want to if I don't have to. If I have a better half that makes me honor, I want him to be the backbone and the strong person, because I have to be the strong one for my kid. And then my husband has to lead us. And that's what I wanted. But it took me a long time to accept it and realize that and truly have it.
And with my background, I wanted to fight. That's where I had success from, was fighting. Then I had to realize that I'm not going to fight my wife physically, but that's why I was successful. So I had to start fighting myself intellectually. And I would say that she's smarter than me in that thought process. So I had to learn a whole new thing, you guys. I had to learn how to fight spiritually. And I didn't have that growing up. No one taught me, like, you got to fight spiritually. What the heck is that? Am I going to throw ghost bombs at you? And then, so I'd go and I'd talk to pastor and I'd be like, how do I do this? Can I just yell at her and tell her to do what I want? And they're like, no, let's get in the Bible and read. And all of a sudden, all the solutions kept coming from getting into the Bible and have the Bible talk to me. Like we had said earlier, you read the Bible today, tomorrow, the next day, do it a year later, and all of a sudden it means something different. And for myself, life was presenting me with a problem that I didn't know how to solve, which was a strong Polish wife. Okay. And then so all of a sudden I had to put myself in a situation where I had to solve that problem in a way that built security in my wife, built closeness in our relation, and I had to do it under the light of God. I didn't know how to do that. The only way I did, because I knew people that were godly. I knew people that walked that way. I knew where the answers were, and I went to church to find them. But I had to go get them. It didn't just come to me passively.
And that's another key to your success, because the fact is that Satan is against the family unit. And one of the biggest systemic problems I see in America, especially among Christian families, and this is why the divorce rate is the highest in the church right now. Alex, do you realize that the divorce rate inside the church is actually higher than outside the church, because the spiritual alignment is so off? So you guys figured out something, and it's exciting to know that the man is the spiritual head of the family, but also the man's called to love his wife like Jesus loved the church. So it's not an actual, it's a mutual submission is what you begin to recognize as husband and wife.
Yeah. It's a mutual submission. Yes.
I like
Well,
that.
yeah.
And see,
For sure.
Aaron, one of the things that you taught me, I don't even know if you remember this lesson, and we're moving into your family and your children and stuff, but the thing you taught me was about the alpha dog. Do you remember teaching me about the alpha dog? How
I remember talking about it.
It left a profound impact on me. So like when I see families, I say hello to the parents first, the man first, the woman, then the children, because everything is backward, upside down in the world. And you keep happening where children are running the family, and it's all out of line. And then Justina, you talked about how even when you guys had conflict, it's better to have two parents. It definitely is, because they've proven scientifically that there's the chemicals that are released when it's a male and a female raising a family. There's actual chemicals that get released that if you have a widower, or if you have two of the same sex parents, you're fighting an uphill battle chemically.
Agreed.
At the chemical level. So anyway, you've got this systemic approach, and the enemy is just all about, as you're talking, I'm seeing another key about your relationship besides those three that I talked about, is the fact that you guys understand how the dynamics of a family should be according to scripture, and that's awesome. So go ahead, Aaron. I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
The man, Aaron the man. Yeah, I want to hit up on something that you said. Yeah, you said you're like a brawler kind of man, like you're always ready to fight and stuff like that. And you said, I can't fight my wife, but I can. I had to learn how to fight myself, and I want you to elaborate on that, because that's something that I want to learn. You know what I mean? Like, even in me and my wife, we've been together for 3 years, and this is our first marriage. And I'm 41, and so it was later in life we got married, and so in that aspect, compared to your guys' marriage, we're newlyweds.
Yeah.
And so there's times that, like, I've never hit my wife, never, but there's times that I'm just like, whoa, this woman the Lord gave me. And so it's okay. I have to learn how to take that frustration and say, okay, let me battle myself. Let me figure out how to. Yeah. So can you add to that a little bit?
That was a huge struggle for me. I spent a lot of time with Pastor Mike Metzger going like, Pastor, it'd be so much easier if I could just strangle her. Just a quick headlock. Maybe I could handcuff her. And he'd laugh at me because he knew I wasn't serious. But like I humble myself because it just sounds so terrible. In my macho, manly, testosterone-based ways, I would like to solve things that come easy for me. And when you deal with a woman, they're a gentle vessel, and they're beautiful. So we have to use gentle hands dealing with them. But there was times where I'd be lying and say I didn't literally scream at the top of my lungs at my wife. Listen to me. I'm trying to do the best for us, even if I made the wrong decision, because then we're still in God's light at that point. We're still in God's pathway for us. And so you live and die by your own decision. You live and die by the sword type thing. So I didn't know how to make her trust me. And she shouldn't have at that point in our relationship. She shouldn't have. I did nothing to actually earn that. And it was even harder because she had such a strong role model with her mom, having a very, I don't know how to say it, Eastern Bloc, European, like just an aggressive type of person. And it's a good quality that her mom had. It was definitely a good quality.
Polish women are very strong, and it just you pretty much, if you got to bring in the logs, you bring in the logs. If you got to go chop the
Wood.
tree down, you
Yeah.
chop the tree down. When it's not, you're degrading yourself. You just do what you got to do. It's not, is it hard or easy? I don't know. I got to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And I think the big thing too is, even though we had God centered in our life and we were one,
We wanted
we
guys.
forgot we were one. We in the
Very
beginning
true.
of our marriage, we felt like we were individuals fighting against each other and not together fighting against the devil. Because anytime we had conflict, was it really conflict between us, or was it us being attacked by him and him trying to divide us and make us think
Yeah.
it's two separate people? And that's one thing is, I think when things really, and I would probably say this is probably a newer thing. Like for a long time, we struggled in fighting against each other. And when we realized, probably, I would say a decade ago, that we realized it was that we're together. If we're angry and something is going wrong, it's not his problem or my problem, it's our problem. Let's solve this. We're not looking to divide ourselves. We're looking to keep ourselves together. So if it's finances and we're struggling to make the bills, it's not his fault or my fault. Maybe I'm not paying them right, or he's not paying them right. Whoever takes care of the finances in our marriage, I do. Just because it's my strength. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And I know a lot of people where the men take care of it, but in our marriage, that's my strength. And so I just want to finish my thought. And so let's say we're struggling on our finances. My husband's not going to come and yell at me and say, why aren't you taking care of this? No, he says, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to pay this or pay that. We need to work together on this, because it's so easy to blame the other person because their fault for whatever it is. It could be disciplining the kids or just making a simple house decision. We always have to think we are together one. Don't let it break us.
And how we came to that point was getting in the correct alignment with God.
Yeah.
So I have to put God first. When she sees me put God first, she will start trusting me. But she didn't know that. So I would put God first, and then I'd come back. But you're not listening to me. I put God first. I swear I would do that. I was like, you can't tell her that. You can't force her into that submission. And I'm like, yeah, but Mike, you told the Bible, it said that if I put God first, she would listen, and she's not listening. It was a process, but she would go and say, I think Aaron, mentally, I don't know this for sure. She'd say, I think Aaron made a stupid decision, but he did it with the right heart. He did it with he tried to consult correctly with pastors. He read the Bible. He tried to make his best decision. It didn't work out correctly. Let's reset that and start over. And then slowly but surely, I earned her trust. But I kept having to go back to what I had to put first. I wanted to put me first, right? I wanted to put my thoughts first. There's different ways to skin a cat. She had one way, I had another, and God had a completely different one. And I had to learn that God way in the way that I could accomplish it. You know what I mean? A way that either work or needed to do it. And it was a lot of prayer. And prayer's hard for me as a man. Prayer's hard for me. I don't know about you gentlemen, but I want to put all the weight in my shoulders and walk through glass and say, look, I did it. Look at me. Everybody pay attention. Look what I did. And today it was a different mindset or something. And people be like, holy cow, how'd you do that? I have no idea. I prayed a lot, but and then all of a sudden it happened. And so to answer your question, I think for us, Aaron, the key was to me keep going back to people who could help center me with the Bible. I'm a very literal person. And if they told me the Bible said do X, Y, and Z, I would do X, Y, and Z and look at her and say, I just did X, Y, and Z. You have to now listen to me. And Pastor Mike would go, no, don't do that part. But yeah, but you said. And so it was weeks and months and years of me going through and said, hey, look, I'm really trying to do the right thing here. I may have screwed it up. It may not have gone the way I wanted to, but I want to let you know I'm trying to do the right thing. And somehow she actually got mine. And the way it was explained by Betsy, I think it was, and Betsy and I have not always got along. I had a battle Betsy, but she really was a very impactful part of our life. Betsy would say, Aaron, you're the head. So Justina pays the bills, but when things go down, I'll sit with her and say, how are you paying the bill? I want this taken care of, that taken care of, and I have to trust you're going to do it. And she's absolutely all good at the time. But she's the neck, I'm the head, and the head doesn't go anywhere without the neck pointing it, right? And that just works for us. I feel like that is very biblical. It puts me at the top, but she helps direct me. She's rubbing my back and saying, honey, just move this direction with it. Okay, I can do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's
That's good.
the mom, like we do have a huge influence on our husband.
Did that question at all, Aaron?
Yeah. I really liked so pretty much through increasing your prayer time and getting wise counsel is a big part of battling yourself and getting into alignment. And so that did. Thank you.
And I didn't like everything I was told. I'll be honest with you. I didn't like what I was reading in the Bible every single time. I didn't like the way it had it resolved. That wasn't something I liked, but I had to learn how to do it because she was really important to me.
See, here's the interesting thing about where I am in life, because I'm now on my second marriage, and my wife is a very strong, independent woman. She's a property manager here in Thailand. And the Thai culture, she was a single mom who raised her daughter. At one point, she was in a dirt floor hut with no air conditioner where she would stay up at night. I'm hearing very similar to you, just she'd stay up at night and fan her child because they didn't have AC. So she wouldn't sleep. Here's a strong woman. And that's one of the biggest areas that I'm having to earn my trust with my wife. And she does handle the books because the fact is Thai money and I don't have a Thai account. I hear some of the things, and I've got somebody that disciples me. He very somebody that isn't a church because I'm unchurched. I go to many different churches, but we have a tight relationship, and I consider my pastor, and he's giving me similar advice to what you guys are getting and talking about the Bible. So I see that. So if there are any families that are out there struggling, re-listen to what Aaron and Justina really shared, because it's key to their success. They're humble, they're transparent. They're saying, Aaron admitting there have been times that I've had to yell to get my point across, and it's taken time. And you're right about the women being gentle and all that. So the two becoming one, that's the main thing. I started with this. The enemy really hates you guys, absolutely hates you. But you figured out a way to say, doesn't matter, loser. We're going to stay together. We're going to make this thing work. And it's our belief in God and the word of God. And that's the foundation. And I see why your family is considered, and it's not perfect because there's only one perfect one. That's Jesus, who was in us. That's the only perfect one that walked the earth. And even he beforehand had to learn things. He had to get disciplined by his parents. So it's a process that we go through. But I really think about it right now. I want you guys to each answer this separately, and whoever wants to go first. Imagine right now, because your children are they all adults, or how's the youngest one?
The youngest is 15.
All the rest are in their 20s.
The others are 20 and older.
All right. So the 15-year-old, you're going through this, so you can relate to it. Just imagine having infants right now that you're looking at facing to bring into the current curriculum of what's going on in school. I want you each to answer this separately. Like, how are you wrapping your head around what's changed just in the last 5 years in America? Just speak to that and give some wisdom to some young parents. Go ahead.
If you could ideally homeschool your kid, heck yeah, I would do that. But not everybody can do that. And I will tell you, again, this is coming from someone I need to be working, I need to have a career, I need to be also help provide. I would make sacrifices that I didn't think I would back in the day now and homeschool. You can homeschool. You need to, and you have to send them to a public school, then you just need to be on top of everything. Go to the teacher conferences and read what the kids are reading. Go to the libraries. It takes a lot more work now to be a parent. And not that it's not worth it. I'll tell you, if you just focus on your family, raising your kids, being the spouse you need to be to your husband or wife, that's the focus, in blocking everything out. If you can send your kids to a Christian school, that's great too. Our kids all went to a Christian school to 8th grade, and we allowed them when they hit high school to either stay in a Christian school or go to a public school. And they all chose to go to a public school. And my one son, he's 21, and he's, Mom, I'm so glad you allowed us to do that. And not to say that we were isolated in a Christian school, but it just opened us up to a different world. They went, my three older ones went to 2 different high schools because we moved in the middle, and they just went to 2 different high schools. So one high school, they dealt with certain kind of drugs, and the other high school, they dealt with other drugs. And they're like, we just feel like going to a public school helped us, but also knowing that they can come home and talk to Aaron and I. And Aaron is extremely open with kids. Like, he'll just bluntly talk about everything. And our kids, they're not afraid to come and ask us questions. Sometimes they might be afraid because we're such strong parents that if it's something in school, they know we're not afraid to go to school to stick up. So sometimes they'll be like, Mom, I want to tell you this, but you don't need to call the teacher. You don't need to go to the principal. We got this under control. And I'm like, as long as you have it under control, because when they're coming into high school, they're going to be starting to get into adulthood. So yes, if they can take charge, and there's times where I had to step in and Aaron had to step in, especially when our kids were in high school during the pandemic and we were in a very liberal state. We were in a blue state. Now we live in a red state. And it was just horrible and what they did to the children. And it is affecting some of our kids even now in their adult years, on how much they lost of just human touch, human contact, and just different things of events that they were pretty much just taken away from. My daughter, my oldest, she graduated as a senior in 2020. She didn't have the ceremony. She didn't have the graduation ceremony. She didn't have the proms. She
Spend
didn't
time
have
with
the
your friends.
senior activities.
Yeah.
She had nothing. And then when she went to college, it was worse than being
Yeah.
home. You thought, oh, I get to college, I get to meet new people, I can be in a suite. Nothing. You can't do anything. And she's, I don't even know what's worse, Mom, being at home, or not that being home is bad, but when
They
you're
want their independence.
out of high school and you're going to college, you want that independence. You want to learn how it is to be free and make decisions and be wild and crazy, but then also know not when not to be wild and crazy, whatever that is. And so I just think parents today, I feel like we are very involved in our kids, but I feel, wow, you really have to even be more involved. It's almost like you can't even have a social life because you need to be so involved in what your kids are in. And that's not a bad thing. And I'll say, as much as we spent time with our kids, sometimes I wish I spent more time with them and not working, because then later on they were going to school and I was working. So it didn't matter if I was home or not, but I was always readily available because we have a cell phone. I just feel like maybe I shouldn't have spent so much time. And when they think, oh, you need some girl time. Yeah, we all need girl time. But I'm like, maybe I should have spent more time with my kid. And again, funny to say this because we spend so much time with our children. We did life group with our kids and other couples and things like that. But I don't know. I don't think you can ever spend enough. And I used to also sometimes drive my kids to school in the morning. And sometimes I felt, oh, I'm taking away that responsibility of them getting up and taking the bus and being on time for it. But then I'm like, no, at that time, like the conversations that you would have in the morning or when you pick them up in the afternoon, and mind you, I don't always drive or pick them up. It was just occasional. It was very precious because there would be conversations or things they would just bring up that wouldn't be brought up because maybe we're always so busy with sports or activity, but just that quiet time, and they would just pop up different thoughts or things that happen in school.
One of the guys that we came close with, Vinny, a friend of yours as well, in Connecticut, said it is, as a parent, it is as much quality time as it is quantity. It's both. It's not one or the other.
No, it's both.
And it's both. And I agree with that. And he stays all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I always heard it was quality time. It's both. It's incidental contact. It's sitting next to your kid with your hand on their shoulder for no particular reason. It's your leg touching theirs, just letting them know that you're there. So I believe, can you repeat the question again, Vinny? Make sure I stay on track with this.
Yeah, what I was questioning is, I actually forgot because I'm on to my next question. Aaron, do you remember the question? Because I'm living in the future right now. So
Oh,
go
it was
ahead.
just saying what you would do
Different in
different in
today's
today's
society.
world, raising a
Yeah,
child
yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
with the
if
young.
you had an infant, if you had a kindergartner right now,
Yeah.
like you got a 15-year-old, so that's still, you're still on the cusp. But let's say you had a child now going to kindergarten. You know, well,
Oh, another thing I said, I would not give them any electronic. Like just
these are
say
the kind of things I
no
want to hear.
electronics. I would in what's easier now than when we raised kids is controlling what they watch and what they see. And I will say I was pretty cautious because we had a lot of CDs and DVDs. Now everything's on TV, smart TV. So they had a cabinet of any DVD, CDs that they wanted to
That
play
we can
that we
control,
can
and they can
control.
make the decision.
So
on.
we controlled it that way. But today's world, the kids can get on and watch everything and
Yeah.
anything. I would completely have all that in control. I would do all the parental safeguards that there were out there, and I would completely watch and yeah, maybe brainwashing your children to be just one certain way, but that's okay because I would try to feed them as much positivity because they're going to get so bombarded with negativity and the world way more than we realize that don't ever feel like you're doing too much controlling because it's not controlling, it's just safeguarding them and then teaching them if something comes their way that they don't agree with, they feel uncomfortable, teach them tactics to overcome those.
So for ourselves, this was a big thought of ours. So as everybody else, when our kids were younger, our oldest kids are in their 20s. When they were younger, everybody else was buying electronics for the kids. Can you take care of that?
Mhm.
Electronics for the kids. And we were actually going out and buying Legos, Lincoln Log, coloring books, different things that allowed those kids to actually use their personal creativity in there. And everybody else, oh, we bought our kid the next new game system. And I'm like, we didn't. And we're not going. And they would actually look at us and be like, you're making a mistake. And I'm like, I don't think I am. I don't think I am making a mistake. I think I'm actually doing what's going to work best for these kids. And this is where I'm going to stick to it. There's not a question. And then the next thing was going to school. We sent our kids to a Christian school, which I was really surprised how many issues we actually had with the secular schools. And so as we went further along, the plan the entire time was to give them the foundation. As you raise your kids, they'll come back. And so we want to raise our kids in a Christian school. We were lucky that the church we went to, which is a very good church, was actually owned a school, a high school, I'm sorry, a preschool to 12th grade school. So I felt like there was a lot of duplicate messages that would sink in. And so we sent them there. You're going to have the same challenges, but the big difference for those challenges is in the secular schools, I'm never able to talk to the parents. In our Christian school, the headmaster of the school would bring the two parents in before they even brought the kids in and be like, hey, this is what happened. How are we going to solve it? And then he would act like a mediator with the Bible. And then we'd sit down and be like, look, our kids are dumb. They're young. They're impressionable. Let's do something that allows them to know each other better. I think one time, I don't remember which kid it was. Maybe I shouldn't say if I do remember. And they were like, we're going to suspend your kid for 3 days. I said, I think it's a terrible idea. I think you should take and you should bring the kids into school and make them literally tie their hands together, make them hold hands all day long.
Or just give them some
Yeah,
kind of
like
like
they wouldn't do that.
something-
They wouldn't do that. But in the idea that they need something where they need to be in detention together. And when they get up and do anything, they go do it together. You know what I mean? And so basically they want them stay in the headmaster's office, the two kids that day. And afterwards, I can't say they were best friends, but they had mutual respect for each other. And so we had a good, strong thought process that we put a lot of time and energy into, that as we were raising our kid, we wanted to make sure that we were guiding the information that came to them, knowing that they would fail as kids with some of the worst of the information that would come to them. And that's okay. But when it did come to them, now it's time to talk about it. You saw a R-rated movie. Like, what made you watch it? My friends at school said, okay, all right, what did you see? Because now let's talk about it. Two people having sex. What do you think about that? Were they married? Were they not married? What does the Bible say? What happens if you have sex and you're not married and you want to have a kid? How does that look? You know what I mean? And I remember Justina's jaw hitting the ground. Like, why are you talking to kids like that? And I'm like, I don't know. But I know this, that if we do talk about it, they can never say they didn't hear. And I would keep it biblical, but I also try to keep it
I
as
only took it age appropriate too. I mean, it was
maybe not me.
it
So,
wasn't no yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it
But
wasn't like they
still-
were
but
6 years
still, I
old.
think-
It was like they were 16, 17.
But see, that's one of the adjustments. You know, unfortunately, And I'm going to ask you a hard question, then we're going to wrap things up. Only one hardball question, but it's very necessary because I know you guys, beyond a shadow of a doubt, were the right couple to bring on because she shared such wisdom because it's from the Bible and life experience, not just hypothetical. Teachers are great, but a lot of teachers get criticized because they don't actually go out and do things for teaching. You know what I'm saying? So you guys are teaching from experience. So here's the thing. Unfortunately, in the environment today, the way the world is, the way that things got it going, they're introducing it at such a young, unappropriate age where they're sharing these things. Aaron, I believe you were right on instructing them the way they were. So I'm gonna throw a hardball question. I don't wish this upon your family, but I need to put this out here. And like I said, we'll segue into our final comment. What happened? What advice would you give to the parent out there right now where their child's come and said to them either one of two scenarios? Number one, I believe I'm a homosexual, or number two, I believe I should be a different gender. I'm going to start with you, Aaron, and go to Justina.
Number one, you've already made a
This is
mistake.
hard. Go ahead.
Number one, you've already made a mistake that you've allowed those kids to be influenced by something outside without your knowledge. Because as you go forward, number one, and someone can argue this as much as they want. Justina has gay friends I've spent time with, and they're good people, love the person, hate the sin type of thing. And when those guys have talked openly, they're men. When those guys have talked openly, they've said, I was abused. And that's where it came from. I wasn't born this way. Some people believe that. That's fine if you want to believe that. But in every single case, we all know that God born us as a blank slate. And he doesn't make mistakes with our gender and stuff like that. So the first thing is you've lost contact with your child someplace. You didn't drive them to school and have that important conversation twice a week. You didn't date your child where you take your daughter or your son as a male or female and go out and say, this is how it works. You know what I mean? Have those simple conversations. You've lost that. You need to start back and go backwards. You need to love that kid. You need to get him in front of the right thing. I think, again, me personally, I'd want to strangle him. I'm just being honest. I'd want to strangle the gayness out of them. That's what I want to do because that's how I easily solve things. What I would do is I would go back and I'd start digging into my church, going to the pastor and saying, you got to help me. And I would pray and hope that the pastor would dig into biblical verses that I could go through and read. I'd probably buy a Christian book, how to deal with a gay child, you know what I mean, at that point. And then I'd try to educate myself as much as possible. I'd also get a book for the child to read and myself. I have a real funny story with it. It's brief. You want to hear it? Okay. I'm not the type of person to go out and hand out tracts.
Right.
Okay. It's not me, right? I'd rather take a tract and punch someone in the face and stick it in their back pocket. So when they wake up and be like, oh, someone back, right? It doesn't really work. So I go out and I'm at our church and I remember saying to myself, I'm never doing that kind of stuff. God, as soon as you say I'm never doing that stuff, God put it on my heart to go hand out freaking tracts.
They went to they had to go to daycare.
So I went with these guys that I didn't really know. And I'm a guy, I don't need any friends. I need my dog, my truck, and my lawnmower. So I decided I'm going to route with these guys and we're going to go hand out tracts at the gay parade. Okay.
Nice.
So go out and I say, all right, give me some tracts. And the guy hands us like 4 or 5 tracts. He goes, you won't hand out more than that. They don't want to hear us. They don't like us here, so on and so forth. I'm not having that. If I'm going to do something, do it 100%. I said, give me 100 tracts, right? He's, oh, just give them back to me when you're done.
I love
Vinny,
it.
I go out and I hand out all these tracts, right? And there was a Bible church there that this guy shows up. He's got a gun holster on with no gun in it. He's trying to make a point. He's got a bullhorn screaming at people like Leviticus and Old Testament and going to hell and all this stuff. And I remember standing around him, handing out tracts. I'm like, hey, I'm a Christian too. Would you like to talk? And we hand these all out. I go to the end of the parade, end of the street. I swear this is a true story. End of the street, end of the parade. And there's these guys down there and they call themselves Bears, I think. Bears. It's a gay guy. It's chubby. He's like forward and he's, I'll take your track if you hug me. And I'm like, that's really disappointing because that's really disappointing because I don't want to hug you, right? I'd rather have a conversation with you. I'm not that way, right? So I take the track, I give it to him, he accepts it, and he's, wow, I'm really stunned. Like, I can't believe it. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't get it. So I come home, I saved one track, I want to come home and read it. I didn't read the track, right? I just handed them out. Like, I'm assuming you did the right thing. I hand out all but maybe 4 or 5 tracks. The guy that gave me out of the back of his trunk the parking lot 3 or 4 blocks away, was like, "You handed them all out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I handed them all out." I come home, I hand it to Justina. She starts laughing her butt off, Vinny. She's almost crying. I pick it up, I read through the whole thing. It's about a gentleman that was gay, started going to church. When he started getting to the Bible, starts getting to the Bible. Yeah. When you turn on the back of the thing, the guy's picture was in the back of it. And guess who exactly he looked like?
Your bear.
Look, Aaron.
Me.
Like you.
He looked like me. The guy in the thing looked just like me. Yeah, everybody thought I was handing out a tract that I was gay. I found God and I'm no longer gay.
Only God.
It looked like Aaron. Oh my gosh, this guy looks like you. Like,
God.
oh,
Only
that
God
is
can
great.
do that.
For the record, I'm not gay. I have never been gay.
Only
God.
God.
I handed out literally 100 tracts of what everybody thought, whoever read it, thought that I was the gay guy in the story.
I can assure you that you had some conversion. I can assure you, Aaron.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, guys. I had people grabbing my ass, Vinny, right? But because I'm such a physical person, I just be like, hey, stop that. That's inappropriate. Like,
Because they try to be funny.
yeah, they're trying to be cute. But I'm like, you guys, inappropriate. If a girl here doing this stuff and a guy grabbed her butt, they go to jail. It's not going to bother me because, quite honestly, like, nothing by it except for the annoying. But the big picture, like, your perversion is in public and this needs to stop. It can't happen that way.
Yeah. Yeah. For me,
You're so down there. Yeah, go ahead, Justina. You answered the
oh,
question.
yeah. I will say that you hear a lot, and when close friends have come to me and that's happened to them. And I would tell them that I love them. I always love them unconditionally, but we need to talk about this. And do you truly feel God made that mistake and didn't make you the person that you are today, the female or the male? And also, even if they say, "This is how I feel wrong and this and that," I'm like, you're so young, like, you're gonna go through all these different emotions, and right now your hormones, and even though, yes, I'm talking all logically and scientifically, at the same time, like, I remember when I was growing up, I went through tomboy phase, and I would talk to them and say,
Right.
"I went through a tomboy phase." So if it was my daughter, I'd be like, I felt like I was better off with hanging out with guys, boys, and doing things boys like to do. But it didn't mean that I'm a boy. It just mean I enjoyed doing that thing. And there's some girls that are very girly, and there's some girls that are very more masculine. Is that right or wrong? No, that's just their strengths, and that's where they feel comfortable. But it doesn't mean that they have to change their whole body composition and become that man or woman, because now you're going against God, and now you're going to start taking drugs to control your
To make your life
personality
harder.
and control who you are. And do you want something to control you, or do you want to continue making your own decision? And I would I would tell them that you're my child. I love you. And these feelings that you're going through are so temporary. And if you truly feel like that, and this is, first of all, I pray that it doesn't happen to me where my child feels that way. But I always say the big thing with my kids when they were growing up is they wanted to all have a tattoo. And I laugh. And my oldest daughter would say, "Mom, I want to get a tattoo." And we're like, "Okay, what do you want to get a tattoo of?" She goes, "A rose." And me and Aaron would laugh. We're like, "A rose." Everybody wants to get a rose. And then when you're 30, 40, 50, they never got it. What the heck they were thinking? So we could go to ourselves. And I said, "Listen, I don't have any tattoos. My husband does." But he didn't get it until he was beyond his first tattoo, until he was almost 25. And I said to my kids, I said, "You're going to go through so many ups and downs, roller coaster feelings, different likes and dislikes." I said, "Why don't you take a picture of what you really want as a tattoo? Wait till you're 25, after you through high school or through college or your first couple of jobs. And when you're 25 and you look at that picture and you still want that tattoo, then go get it done."
How's that
Go-
correlate with the gay
Go.
child?
How does that? I will bring it back. And I almost say the same thing, because a boy doesn't fully mature until 26, 27. A female about 25.
That's correct. That's
And
correct.
I would say to them that if you truly feel this way when you're 25 and older, then you make the choices at that point to do what you feel that you need to do. But don't let it just be your choices. Pray about it and ask God, because that's when you'll be done with your puberty. You'll be done with growing and maturing, and then you can make more logical. And I know that people are like, "No, they're growing up now and they're going through their hormones and all this and that." But again, coming from more of a science and medical background, people don't realize what they're doing to their children by giving them these
Hormone
medications and
blockers.
hormone blockers. You think you're doing it justice and you're trying to convert them to the opposite sex. No, you're not. You're converting them to a zombie. You're converting them to be a monster. And you can disagree with me and say they feel better, they feel comfortable.
No, they
No,
don't.
they don't. They still don't feel comfortable. Where's the highest suicide rate? The highest suicide rate is in the LGBTQ community. Plus,
Yeah.
seriously, because that's where the highest suicide rate is, because they don't know. They want everybody, they're so focused on being that other, that what they're not created. It's like a bear trying to be a lion. He's never going to be a lion. His natural instincts are never going
Always
to
to
get
be a
him,
bear.
are always to be a bear. And you're trying to go against what God created, but you're not, you're just going against the way your body is. And these might be conversations that people are like, what's doing my child? They cried at me. Listen, my child, when they were little, maybe they wanted to, they're going to be a fireman when they grow up. Okay, great. They know that's just very
Surface.
surfacey. But at the same time, how many kids grow up to be really what they say when they were little? None
Sure.
of you. And a lot of these, they're going to hate their parents when they're older and be like, Mom, why did
Why'd
you
you
let
let me
me
do that?
do that? Why did you let me go in and change myself? And we're like, because you wanted to. Yeah, but mom and dad are better than me
I
at
was a
that time. As a child, why'd you let me do that? It's almost like you say a child wants to, I don't even know. I just, it's just like maybe go in
What they want to eat.
what they
They
want
want
to
to eat
eat.
nuggets chicken nuggets all the time. And a mom says, all my kid will eat chicken nuggets. And you say, take the chicken nuggets away. Don't have them in the house and it won't be a problem.
Yeah.
Same thing if you go through, they bring this round robin. If you go through and you don't let that perverted type of horse shit go into the kid's mind, then they can't think that way. You allow your kid to go to school and there's a furry. You guys know what a furry is? I didn't know what that was. A furry is a kid who thinks he's a cat or a dog at school. And some of the parents in New York have actually petitioned the school to put kitty litter boxes in the bathroom so the kid can poop and pee in a kitty litter box. Freaking kidding me? If you let your kid get to that point, it's complete mental illness. You let your kid be around something like that, you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang around in life. If you're hanging around people that have mental illness, you will have mental illness. It's that simple.
Right. I think parents need to be
Yeah.
stronger and they need to stop, like the big thing you
Catering.
mentioned earlier, Vinny, was where this generation is letting the kids rule the family and lead and
Oh,
guide the
that was a good
family.
point. Yes.
No, that's, you don't, I mean, yeah, you can, maybe we're going out to eat. We can go to this diner, we can go to this steakhouse, or we can go to this Italian, which one do you want? Maybe giving them options, but then telling them what to do. They don't know what the world has to offer. As a mom and a dad, it's our role. It's our role to guide them and lead. And people are afraid to say,
And you're right. And you just look at it from I'll pull the science and not the scriptural basis because I'm big into the Bible. Well, obviously, the insurance industry knows more than parents. You can't rent a rental car until you're like 25 with proper, you don't a full insurance policy until you're 25, because to your point, Justina, the brain is developing up until the age of 25 minimum. The consistency of a child's brain till 7 years old is butter. It's like the consistency of butter. So you're
Yeah.
now having a child being influenced, but that doesn't have a fully developed brain at that point, being influenced by somebody who, and we'll call it what it is, mental illness, because it used to be defined as mental illness until Harvey Milk, the leader of their organization, threatened family men by urinating on his desk, and they quieted down. So my whole point bringing this down, thank you for answering in a hardball question, is you don't have to stray. You guys will be okay if that faced with that. I'm confident based on what you shared today, you're not perfect, but you would lead your children properly, even in this time. See, because the thing is that everybody thinks we live in such an evil world. It's always been evil, folks. The light,
It's always been.
what happens when you walk in an apartment building, a tenement building, you turn on the light, the cockroaches scatter. I believe the light's getting brighter and it's just
Right.
exposing the darkness.
It's
That's what I
agree.
That's what I feel. So if you
just have
guys
to be
want to, I'm sorry.
you just have to be, you have to be, I'm saying not harder and being mean and stronger and standing your ground. And my kids know there's certain things that we're set on, and that's it. And that's it. And they need to know where you stand. You love them, but just because if they go against what you say and defy you, it doesn't mean it's okay. It's disrespect. And they still need to know respect and say, in my house, if they have a girlfriend or boyfriend and they're sexually intimate with that person and they're coming into our home and they're not engaged or married, they're not allowed to sleep in the same room. We already set those rules as they're growing up and saying, as you get girlfriends and boyfriends, and if, they come because they go to college, they meet people in different places in other states. If you invite somebody to come visit you, don't
That's fine.
think,
Yeah.
they can come visit you, but you'll be sleeping in 2 different rooms. And we have a 22, 21, and a 20-year-old. And that's still young in my eyes, but some people are like, they're over 18. If they want to do that and they're doing it at their other house. I don't
Not in
care
our house.
what they do in another house. Not that I don't care, but in our house, we have certain rules. If you have a opposite sex over, you're not in your bedrooms, you're downstairs, because it's temptation and
Just doesn't
it
put
just doesn't put anybody in a good position. And it's just better to separate that. And there's certain things that
So the point of that is to be able to control moral values to these kids and say, look, you're going to respect what I say. In my house, under God, this is how we do it. And it hasn't changed. It's not going to change. This is you get married. God bless you. I hope you have beautiful children. Right. But it's got to be something done in the way that those kids wind up seeing there's a left, there's a right, and there's right down the middle where God wants us to be.
And yes, I will say one thing. They're like, Mom and Dad, did you not have sex before marriage? We did, but do you want to learn from our mistakes? Or do you want to learn from doing the right thing? Just because we did something a certain way doesn't mean that's the right way.
We learned from it.
We learned from it. We weren't saved at that time. We weren't in the right upbringing and mindset. But don't learn from our mistakes. Don't remake our mistakes.
Yeah.
Don't repeat our mistakes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, you guys. I want to just
Thank you
let
guys.
you know that this has been such a great show, and we're just so glad that God chose you to be the couple that would talk about such an integral topic. And there are definitely some golden nuggets you shared. So
I hope so. I hope it helps somebody. You don't know who you can help. It's always and the big thing is if you can just help one mom or one dad or one couple, that makes a huge difference. And we all need good people in our lives that we can look up to and we can reference and that can help us.
excellent. Any parting words, Aaron?
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so anyway, this was part 1. Like I said, next week we'll be talking about It's All About the Children. That's a great show, and I would recommend that you follow us on YouTube, you subscribe, you like, and share and comment. Please comment on YouTube on our programs and on Facebook. Share it out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was talking to the
Oh.
listeners out there to please do that. It's just remember, same time, same bat station, 6 p.m. East Coast Standard Time. It's standing in the gaps, and we are definitely making a difference, one person at a time. How do you change the world? One person can't change the world, but one person impacting another person. And Aaron and Justina definitely do that tonight. So thank you again, Aaron and Justina. And without further ado, remember this: the best with a capital B is yet to come.